Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, here at the Partner First here, February 17th, 2021. Very excited to do this Partner First. It's one we've actually, our guests and I have been talking about for a long time, something I've definitely wanted to do for a long time. We're going to have Bradley Gross of the law offices of Bradley Gross. You've seen him at conferences, you've seen him at speaking engagements. He is the utmost authority on MSP governance and contract law. And without any further ado, Brad, how you doing, man?
Hi, how are you, Ray? Good to see you.
Same here, same here. It feels like we've been doing this, we've been talking about doing this forever, and every month or two something else comes on, whether it's an MSP getting sued for shutting down, services when they shouldn't have or maybe shouldn't have, or the conversation becomes what do you hand over to another to the client at offboarding, or how to protect yourself before you even collect that first payment from them. Sure. And your name comes up every single time one of those things pop up in current events with salient advice. So why don't you tell us about yourself?
I think you and I have been trying to do this for about 8 months now, right? And something
at least
always pops up. So there we go.
So and I appreciate you fitting time in, because I know you're extremely busy. So one of the few blessings of COVID is that we actually got to sit down and do this. So thank you for that.
Thanks for having me. Thank you. So a little bit about me. You asked a little bit about my background. So for those of you who don't know me, Brad Gross, I am the founder and president of the law office of Brad Gross down here in Florida. We have clients throughout the world, actually, and we are a boutique law firm concentrating in the technology sector. And along those lines, we represent MSPs and VARs and all kinds of service providers in all facets of their business. As Ray has so generously said, we have been doing this quite a while, and we're well known in the industry for helping MSPs achieve what they need to achieve and explaining legal concepts in just a plain English kind of way. And that's what we're going to do today. We're going to talk in plain, everyday language. By way of background, I started out as a 11-year-old hacker on a TRS-80, Model 1, Level 2, for those of you who are out there. I still have it, by the way. It's sitting in my office. It works.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it still works. So I started programming assembly language. And with my 300 baud modem, it was great. I ended up going into the district attorney's office up in New York, and then the state attorney in Miami-Dade. And about 20 years ago or so, I went into private practice representing technology companies. So I'm a tech guy that went to law school. That's me.
So, and I want to address that early on, right? Because we get this all the time. Let's be honest. You can't throw a nickel into a crowd without hitting 50 or 60 attorneys, right? But I'm a big proponent of find the subject matter expert. So when it comes, can law be spoken in plain everyday language? We'll get to that, Dan. And I like to think that Brad actually does a really good job of that. But when it comes to finding that person that's going to be by your side, right? That counsel that is going to protect your business, is going to look out for your best interests. How important is it to get somebody that actually understands the technology, understands the thing you're actually selling?
Well, it's important on several levels. First, it's important on a substantive level, because you want to make sure that the person with whom you're dealing understands what you do and how you do it. So it shouldn't be at a critical point, whether it's a contract negotiation or a dispute resolution, you shouldn't be at a critical point where your attorney looks at you and says, now, tell me again, what is this RMM exactly, the software agent thing? How does that work? I mean, that's not the point where you want to say, I have to teach him or her what I do. Right. That's not when you want to find out. The second thing, and it's really, candidly, a financial aspect. You don't want to have to pay to teach someone. Really, a lot of attorneys, all
the day, the attorneys are charging by the hour for their time, as they should be. And,
exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so you don't want to have to pay for that time to tell the attorney what you do and how you do it. It's far more efficient if you walk in and say, all right, look, I'm offering infrastructure as a platform, infrastructure as a service rather, or platform as a service. I have a BDR, I resell this vendor's solution. Here's my issue. And let's get right into it. That's the most efficient.
And at the end of the day, it's the whole, everything about the contracts is about protection, right? So you want to know somebody that knows where the dark corners are, that knows what the gotchas are, the red flags,
right,
and can navigate those waters successfully. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, some of the, and I hate FUD. I hate FUD with a passion. So I want to get that out there. But we're going to talk about some scary things today, right? We're going to talk about the things that could destroy someone financially, could destroy their business, or at least harm their business in a meaningful way.
Right.
And those are the 5 risks you're going to talk about today, right?
Of course. And the meaningful way, by the way, is money. That's really what it comes down to, because ultimately it's all about money. It's all about your business. It's all about liability, which ultimately boils down to how much you're going to have to spend to avoid a problem, how much you're going to have to spend to fix a problem. The idea is avoidance, if you can. And then if you can't avoid it, what are you going to do to make sure that if you have to spend to fix it, that you've minimized your risk, that you've limited your risks? That's what it's about.
And that's the key point here too, right? I imagine it's far cheaper to address these things in the beginning before they become a concern than after you've been doing business for 10, 15 years and have contracts that need to be redone and, potentially already at risk, right?
Right. Always. It's always easier to start, though. It's never a bad time to do it the right way. So I see MSPs at all different stages in their business life cycle. Sometimes we'll be contacted by a service provider that says, I'm just starting up. I'm moving from a break-fix model into the service model. I want to do it the right way. Great. Sometimes we'll get calls from MSPs that are already established, but are in an evolutionary stage that they know they want to take it to the next level, to the next highest level. And they want to make sure that as they're doing it, they have all of their, T's crossed and their I's dotted. And of course, finally, you have MSPs, huge service providers that we represent, billion-dollar companies that turn around and say, wow, we never really thought about these contract issues until we've gotten hit with this lawsuit or this threat and so on. We did an audit and realized they were written 10 years ago. Help us redo them now. So it runs the continuum.
I think that brings up a good point. It's not just about getting the protection early on, but this should be an ongoing relationship, right? This should be something reviewed annually or as concerns come up, that kind of thing.
Right, because as we'll talk about in a few minutes, if your MSA is written well, if your service agreement is written well, if your documents are solid, they don't need to be reviewed every year or maybe even every other year. But every 3 years, every 4 years or so, there is a new reality out there. There's a new situational reality, whatever it might be. It might be hardware as a service, platform as a service, infrastructure as a service. It might be security. It might be the next great thing comes along. And you just want to make sure that your documents are updated. Not necessarily rewritten, but updated every 3 or 4 years.
Before we get too far into this, Dave mentioned Brad sounds so much slower at 1x versus his podcast. It's usually a 2x. And those of you who want to get awesome information, and Brad does have his podcasts, affectionately known as the Technology Bradcasts. And we'll put it out there on the link is on the banner below. But Brad was talking about how as things come up, and they do actually come up fairly often, as things come up in current events, he gives your thoughts on it. Is that basically the gist of it?
Yeah, that's really what it comes down to. Ideally, I would like to say that my broadcasts are sent out every week or every other week and so on, but just life gets in the way, career gets in the way. And so I would say that on average, it's twice a month. And of course, when something big happens, either through a case or an event or something, then of course I'll put one up pretty quickly about it. But generally speaking, it is more of a conversational kind of a thing between me and a service provider out there that's trying to start up or trying to do the right thing. And we just say in 8 to 10 minutes how to do that.
And to Dan's point, it's spoken in plain English. You're not speaking legalese, and we don't need a law library to translate everything you're saying in the podcast.
Right. If look, very often I'll begin presentations by showing a quote by Gene Siskel, who said that basically jargon is to be avoided. Jargon is something that is usually said by people who either don't know what they're talking about or are trying to hide something. And so I try not to use any jargon. And if I do use jargon, feel free to jump in and say, Brad, I'm turning on a jargon alert here, and I need you to figure out a different way to say that. So, but I don't think that'll be a problem.
I'll get Simon to do a lower third or something if we catch you giving jargon.
Yeah, I think that the worst thing that you're going to hear from me is my New York accent might come out in the middle of this. As much as I try to hide it, sometimes I talk like this a little bit, and it comes out.
And we may get to some Sinatra, some Sinatra covers at the end of this.
If it's requested, I might do that. Yeah.
So without much further ado, why don't we get into your presentation? And guys, this is not going to be a long-winded presentation. Brad is a prolific speaker with a lot of experience doing this, knows better than to just sit there and point at slides for the next 45 minutes. Right. We want this to be conversational. We want you to ask questions. And as we always do, we'll address them as we go along.
All right. So if this is working correctly, Ray, you should see the Foundational 5 screen on my screen. So I don't see the comments or questions at all. I just see this on my screen. So if there are comments or questions, feel free to
read them out to you. No worries.
Great. All right. So today, the 5 risks to your service, to your company. And all MSPs are in this boat, by the way. I don't care if you're just starting out, if you've been established for a while, or if you are a significant player in the industry. All service providers are at risk unless they address 5, what I call the foundational 5 areas that every company needs to address. Everybody needs to. And, my deep thoughts that I'm putting out there are that I speak very plainly. So soon you will too. If you thought that it requires a lot of fancy legal language and so on, it doesn't. And if you think your company is perfectly safe, well, that's probably not true for most of you out there, but we're going to make them safe. We're going to help you get safe.
So I want to get into that real quick before you get too far into this. That is the most common question we get on Reddit. That is the most common question I see in my social circles, right? MRU, IT Pool Party, everything MSP. When should I get contracts done? Do I do it before I have clients? Do I do it? I know the answer is eventually going to be get them done, but
right.
Is there a point that's too soon for contracts, or are we doing this at the nascent stage? What's the recommendation?
It's never too early to do a contract. Ideally, you want to have a contract ready when you approach a client because, well, one, for timing purposes, you want the deal to move along and you don't want the contract to be an obstacle. 2, it brings a degree of credibility. When a company walks in and says, here's our contract, and it's a well-written contract that looks like it addresses the law, the realities that we're going to talk about in a few minutes, it brings a credibility to the table that the client, your customer, will feel more comfortable with you, as opposed to saying, all right, you want to sign up with us? Let me get back to you in a few weeks. We're drafting some contracts. That's not how you want to do it.
I remember my early days where I'd go to a sales call, I'd do the proposal, or I'd get everything, do my discovery, get the scope of work, get everything I'm going to do, and say, okay, I'll get you a proposal in 24 hours, go back to the office, and it was like, one, I don't have a proposal template. I don't have a contract. I don't have...
Everything you promised, you have to now start drafting. Everything you promised.
It's always people. If you can't have them sign a contract, how are you going to start making money? So,
right. Yeah. Right. So, that said, if you don't have a contract, or if you're in the middle of a relationship with a customer and you realize your contract is no good, there are ways that you can inject a better one into the relationship, and we'll talk about that. So Yeah, it's never too early and it's never really too late, but earlier is better. Okay, so after today, your company will be safer again. It may even be, quote, great again. That I threw in just as a punchline. That's not I'm not getting political on anybody there.
I
And
think we're gonna
all this.
some hats made, right? We're gonna get
Yeah,
some.
I'm going to get emails for that. I'm going to get
contracts
emails. And of course, all of this in 6 slides, including the first 2 that you saw, and an awesome survey, which we're going to talk about. If you go to, and I prefer everyone do this after the presentation, not during the presentation, but if you go to foundational5.com, you'll see right there is a survey. And if anyone who fills this out in the next 60 days after this webinar airs, will get a free audit of their documents. So we'll talk more about that afterwards. Nice. But yeah, foundational5.com. If they go there, you'll see the survey about the Foundational 5. And
the URL's right across the lower banner. Simon has it up. But don't feel, like you said, don't feel a need to go rush now. This is fully recorded. It'll be right up on YouTube right when we're done. Go do the survey afterward and have Brad review all your stuff. Yep.
Great. So Foundational 5, and how do they eliminate the risks that are inherent to all of the service providers that are out there? So Foundational 5 is a integrated set, it's really an integrated 5 integrated categories of documents that every single service provider should have. And if you have some, but not all, well, that's not really good, because you're leaving holes. You're leaving holes either in the way that you are dealing with your customers, or you're leaving holes in your business. And any of that could cause problems for you in the future. So you definitely want to consider the Foundational 5. They're the most important documents that you can have to avoid liability, manage expectations, and ensure that your business is operating like a business. Okay, very important. You have to make sure that you operate your business like a business. Just because you might be a 1 or a 2-man shop, don't think for a moment that you don't have to operate like a company. Because today you might be a 1 or 2-man shop, tomorrow you might be a 5-man shop, and then the next day you might be a 20-person shop. Then what? Or even if you're
that's the trick, right? Your risk never gets smaller, it just gets greater. Even if you don't add business, you don't add revenue, even if you don't add clients, it doesn't matter. The longer you're in business, the greater the risk becomes.
100%.
So it's,
yeah, 100%. So, and again, it really doesn't matter about the size of your company, because I've heard a lot of people say, well, I'm just starting out. Do I really need to have a customer, a master agreement with my customer? Do I really need to put down statements of work or have independent contractor agreements ready? The answer is yes, of course you do. Because as you just pointed out, Ray, the work that you're doing is not any different as if you were just, whether you're starting out or whether you have 50 people working for you. The work is the work. The only question is, are you going to do that work and approach it in a way that you've limited your liability, that you've managed expectations, or are you going to roll the dice and see where things end up? So that's the Foundational 5. And along those lines, this is really the slide that we're going to stick on now for the next half hour or so. And again, if you have questions, well, this is the screen I see, so let me know. Foundational 5, series of documents that work together. And we can hit each one of these categories separately. The first category is your MSA. Now, if you have heard me speak before, if you've spoken to me on the phone, if you've heard me speak at an industry event and so on, then you know that what I'm about to say is my mantra. It is what I have said to MSPs for the past 20 years, counseling well over 2,000 MSPs in that time. Every service provider needs to have a master agreement. Now, most service providers don't even know what a master agreement is. They say they do, but they don't. They say, well, I have a master agreement. No, you don't. You probably don't. A master agreement, if you have a pen and paper, write this down. A master agreement is your constitution. It is your constitution. It does not change. It is service agnostic. It applies to everything that you do, and every customer accepts it before you provide a service. It is your constitution, service agnostic, applies to everything you do. I don't care, RMM, BDR, block of hours. If you are singing and dancing at an hourly rate, that's what your client's paying you to do, that applies, okay? And every one of your customers has to accept it before you touch anything, okay? So you might be sitting there and saying, well, how? How do you have a master agreement apply to everything that you do when what you do changes, right? I mean, if, Ray, if I said to you, I'll pay you $1,000 a month, when can I call you if I have a problem? Well, you probably say, well, okay, $1,000 a month, that's very nice. Here are my business hours. But if I said to you, I'm going to give you $20,000 a month, when can I call you? Your answer to me might be, when do you want to call me? Right? I mean, I'm pretty much open for whenever you want to call me. Yeah, anytime you want. So that's a change, right? That's a change. Anything that changes cannot be in a master agreement. So if something changes based on the amount that you're being paid, or something changes based on timing, or like a service, it cannot be in your master agreement. Why? Because I just said your master agreement doesn't change. So how do you have things in your master agreements that change, like services, when Brad keeps saying it doesn't change? Answer, you don't put services in your master agreement. Your master agreement covers law, covers reality. It doesn't cover specific services. And what do I mean by law and reality? Law is the stuff that lawyers like to write, your indemnification, your limitation of liability, and so on. Very important stuff. It's your hell or high water language, right? That's the stuff that if you really mess something up, you're going to hope that your legal covers you. But the other part of the MSA that must be addressed in the document is reality, situational reality. This is where you're dealing with a customer and something happens. It could be a mistake. It could be a misunderstanding and miscommunication. It could just be that something happens. And the question that you then say is, well, now what? Now what? What are we going to do? Right? If your document doesn't answer the now what question, then your document stinks. It has to answer the now what question. Otherwise, why do we have a document? Right? Why have a document if it doesn't answer the now what? And there are a lot of now what.
I want to ask you something real quick before we get into the SOW stuff. You know, there's the old adage, buyers will buy anything, sellers will sell anything, and attorneys will never let you sign anything. So my experience has been when I have my contracts and I send them out, and this usually happens with larger companies that have their own counsel review things, as they probably should before they sign it. You almost inevitably get back something where the client's counsel saying, I would like this revised on the MSA. I would like these terms changed. What's your opinion on that?
So first, the general rule, you don't change your MSA. It's your constitution. Now, that said, I understand that where law and business meet, it is never a perfect fit. Sometimes you have to do things to get the deal done. And depending on the size of the deal and the your level of tolerance for risk, you may want to change your MSA. But you should first try to change your MSA by changing your MSA in the statement of work. If your MSA is written correctly, then the statements of work, those are the documents that describe what you're going to do, right? That's what we're going to touch on now. Those are your deliverables, what you're going to do, how you're going to do it, when you're going to do it, how much you're going to do it for. Any specific terms that might be very relevant to those services, those belong in statements of work. And if your MSA is written correctly, your statement of work will govern in the event of a conflict between the statement of work and the MSA. So how does this all interplay with your question, Ray? Here's how it goes. Your MSA might say something like, no matter what service I provide to you, my liability is limited to the amount that you have paid me in the 6-month period immediately preceding the date of the claim, right? So count back 6 months from when I messed something up. However much you have paid me there, that's my liability limitation. Okay. Now I go to you, Ray, and I say, all right, that I saw your MSA. That's good. But I'm giving you 20 grand a month. I want you to double your liability cap. Now you might turn around and say, sounds good. I'm okay with doubling my liability cap. So what do? First thing you do is you go to your statement of work and you say, for the following services that we're going to provide to you, Brad, we agree that our liability has been increased from 6 months to 12 months or 12 months to 24 months or whatever you might have there. The idea is that is going to govern over your master agreement. And here's the other benefit to it. Let's say a year later, I come back to you and I need you to do a different project, like a cable pole, low voltage cable pole.
Right.
We enter into a statement of work, but there's no mention of the increased liability. Well, if that's the case, then you have increased your liability under statement of work 1, but not under statement of work 2. See, each statement of work is independent of the other. And along those lines, as long as we're segueing into statements of work, here's the thing you need to know about them. The life of one does not impact the life of the other. They are not agreements. They are not contracts. They are not schedules to a contract. They are not exhibits to a contract. They are not incorporated into a contract. They are standalone narratives that are governed under your MSA, but are not incorporated into it. Now, why do I say that? Why is that important? Well, because if you have a contract that says, all right, the sky is blue. That's what my statement of work says. Sky is blue. Okay. Mm-hmm. And then statement of work number 2 comes out and says the sky is green. Well, if we have incorporated statement of work 1 into your master, and then we incorporate statement of work 2 into your master, now your master has the sky is blue and the sky is green. Which is correct? I don't know. So the idea is that each statement of work stands on its own, not incorporated into an MSA, but governed under it. Okay, if that's clear enough. Again, jargon free.
So do statements of work typically have time constraints attached to them as well?
Yes, a statement of work should have its own term and termination, and it should tell a story. And this is the key about a good statement of work. I've read a lot of statements of work where they say, I'm going to give you this service, I'm going to give you that service, and that's it. Here's the deal. Here's the key to writing a great statement of work. Okay, so to recap where we are right now, we have an MSA that covers legal, covers realities, right? And then we have statements of work. Statement of work tells a story such as this statement of work is going to be governed under that MSA that exists. And here's what you need. Boom, 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 boom. Here is how we are going to address it. Boom, boom, boom. Here is what you're going to pay for that, right? Here's when we begin. Here's where it ends. You have to think of it as a story. What is the need? That's the beginning. How do we address it? That's the middle. Then you have to think of the end, because remember, it does end, and hopefully it ends well and amicably, but it might not, right? It might end with your client saying, you haven't performed a service. It might end with you saying to your client, you haven't paid me in 6 months. Either way. So you have to think about the end, and that's how you draft a statement of work. Tell the story. That's the key to the statement.
Let me ask you. So generally speaking, you're drafting the MSA. Are you instructing? I imagine the MSP is not going back to you every time they have a new client with a new SOW. Are you teaching them how to draft these narratives on,
most
these
definitely.
Statements of work?
Oh, most definitely. We review statements of work all the time, thousands of them a year, and there is no one way to write it. So some people like to write it freehand, just a narrative. Some people like to create charts. I like charts personally. I like pictures. Pictures are good. There's no one way to write it. The rule
Especially
of
thumb. If you color them in, right?
That's it. I'll do my Crayola later. The idea is that you have to have a statement of work that can be read by someone who's familiar with the industry. And that person should be able to read it and say, okay, this is what I think you're going to, this is your need, this is what they're addressing, and this is how much it's going to cost you. If somebody can read that and make sense of it, then it's probably well written. If it's overcomplicated or it goes on for pages and then references other paragraphs and so on, it's probably too cumbersome to be, to be good. It might do the job, but you're not managing expectations. And that's part of what you want to do through statements of work, manage expectations. So again, where we are now is you have an MSA, okay, that's your constitution, covers realities. We could talk about some of those realities, what they might be, but just real briefly, because I know I want to get to the other three and then take questions. Realities that might be covered in an MSA. Your client is, you're providing a solution to your client that is regulatory compliant, right? Maybe you're going to give them a BDR system that has encryption at rest while in transit, the whole thing. Great. Does that make them compliant with a regulation? No. You're giving them something that is regulatory compliant, but that doesn't make them compliant with a regulation, right? There's a lot more that goes into it. But I'm telling you, your clients might sit there and think, oh, Ray gave me this BDR and he's got this RMM thing set up. And yeah, I'm compliant with HIPAA. I'm compliant with SOX. No, that's a reality that you need to tell your clients that we're giving you a piece of the puzzle. The balance of the puzzle is up to you. How about clients that don't listen to you, don't take your advice, and then point the finger at you when something happens, right? And you could turn around and say, well, we told them.
Yeah, we talking about.
Yeah, that never happens, right? Never happens. Yeah, and you could turn around and say, Brad, we told them what to do. And I'll turn around and say, yeah, so show me where in your document it says they have to listen to you, right? So I know a lot of people watching this, looking in their documents going, damn, where does it say they have to listen to me? Oh, no. Right? How about a co-managed environment situation? You have an internal IT department that's doing its thing. You're doing your thing. There's going to be overlap. There's going to be friction at some point. How do you handle it? You have to bring this kind of reality out in your MSA, right? These are realities that MSP see.
Real quick, do you find that those where those lines become a little fuzzier, specifically like co-managed, right? Or when they have in-house IT and you're providing subject matter expertise or whatever, do you find those waters to be murkier or more fraught with challenges as opposed to traditional MSP?
Yeah, it's a little bit murkier, but it doesn't have to be murky. Perfectly clear place when you're dealing with a co-managed environment. And you also have to deal with the fact that there are politics involved. Very often, your client that has an internal IT department, they will view an outside vendor as a threat, right? They'll view them as a potential replacement for them. So you have politics and you have overlap. Really, what I think that you need to do is clearly define in your statement of work, because that's where we put our deliverables, right? That's where we describe what we're going to do. Clearly define what you're going to do. And also, just as important, make it clear what you're not going to do, right? Very important. Everybody, people think that, oh, it's, I just list, I'm going to do A, B, and C. Well, you want to avoid project scope creep, right? Where a client assumes you're doing D, E, and F as well. So you want to put down what you're going to do. You want to put down what you're not going to do. And in a co-managed environment, you may even want to have a responsibility matrix set up. That's a little lingo-ish. Sorry. It runs a responsibility chart. Okay. We're going to do this. IT department will do this. We're going to do that. IT department will do something else. There may be times that we're going to act together, in which case there should be a process and a procedure in the statement of work of how that's going to happen. I call you, you call me, we get together, we confer. If there's a problem, somebody, you have to figure out whose opinion will ultimately guide the day, rule the day. But that's how you do it. And you could see that, as we're going through this now, you could see how this would manage people's expectations. And that's the key. That's the key to lowering liability, because most MSPs don't end up in court, but where they spend thousands of dollars and all their time is trying to figure out what to do in the what if situations, right? The now what situations. MSA, SOW, that's what covers it. All right. I could jump into corporate documents unless you have.
So we have a comment here from James. I've always been told to leave what you aren't going to do because it leaves the door open if you forget to list an item. So
Repeat that.
saying,
So if
he's
you're not-
reiterating what you're saying, right?
oh,
Leave it out in case.
leave out what you. Well, here's the deal. Let me say it a different way to cover everything, no matter what I guess James is asking here. Okay. You have two things that you want to do, right? Legal and there's legal and reality. So legally, you want to say what you're going to do. I'm going to do A, B, and C. And that's what you're responsible for. And your statement of work, by the way, should have a catch-all statement in it somewhere that says, if it's not listed in this document, you don't get it. Okay? If it's not listed, you don't get it. That's our catch-all. Now, here's what we're going to do, A, B, and C. That's legal. Now, what's reality? Reality is that your clients don't quite understand that. Reality is that your clients are going to assume that if you're doing one thing, you're going to do something, a logical extension of whatever that is. And you're not, because you and I know that that costs money and time and it's beyond the scope, but your clients don't know that. So sometimes it is very important. In fact, it's always very important to say this, what we're going to do is listed up top. And if it's not here, you don't get it. But that said, here are some examples, some illustrations of things that we're not going to do. We're not going to do electrical work. We're not going to move heavy furniture. We are not going to provide uninterrupted power supplies. We're not going to change the batteries for uninterrupted power supplies, right? We're not going to do cabling. We're not going. These are the things that you'd say, well, of course, I don't do that, but your clients think that you do. So again, I think it's important to put in what you're doing, as well as some examples of what you're not going to do. I understand you can't create a list of everything you're not going to do. That list would go on for pages and pages.
Forever.
I think you could give some, right, but you could give some illustrations of things that, if you think back over the years you've been doing this and you say, where was there a misunderstanding, right? Where was there a misunderstanding? And, whatever that is, make sure your document addresses it. That's what I mean by listing it.
That was something that came up with us very often when we did MSP was if you'd have a client that was moving. And so in the beginning, we did everything. I mean, let's be honest, client asked for something, we were probably doing it as long as we were getting paid for it.
Sure.
But about a year in, made the determination we would break down an office. We would label, package the whole thing. We would build up an office at the new location, but we absolutely would not transport gear from one place to the other. I didn't want to take responsibility should something get lost or broken or an accident happen or whatever else.
Of course.
And that's something you would specifically list here, right? The transportation of equipment between offices, if that's your
Absolutely. And you know what? That might not be applicable to everyone who's listening to this broadcast, and that's okay. I'm not suggesting that there's a definitive list that you have to put into your statement, your MSA or your statement of work, rather, that says we're not going to do these things. I'm suggesting that you do exactly what you just did, Ray. Sit back and say, we used to do this. People have expected it, but we don't want to do that anymore. So as an illustrative example, right? Illustration. Put that in the statement of work. That's how you do it.
So I have here a question from Dan Tomaszewski of Everything MSP. Am I correct that in some states like Michigan is what's not included? It's that what's not included is excluded. So this is, for example, if it's not here, it's automatically excluded. Is that a fair assumption, or is it?
What you're asking, okay, is whether, and it's not just Michigan, it goes to, let's say, all state law. Do states interpret contracts differently, right? Are some more, do some read them more narrowly? Do some have a more expansive view, and so on? I could tell you with an extremely high degree of confidence that Michigan is not going to look at it any differently than New York would, than Texas would, and so forth. If you have a contract and it says you're going to do A, B, and C, a state is not going to read into that anything more. They're not going to what we call blue pencil. That's the legal term for it. Blue pencil in other things that you should do because, well, you should. No. Now, the key is writing a clear and unambiguous statement of what you're going to do. Make it clear that if it's not listed, you don't get it. give some illustrative lists of things that you might have thought were included, but they're not, and then make it very clear. If they have questions, call us. That's how you do it.
Makes perfect sense. So I want to be respectful of time. We're at 12 minutes to the hour, and
Well, I mean,
we seem to be 2 of the 5.
Yeah. What I'm going to do is this. I'm going to go through the other 3 areas that we could talk about. Then if people want to submit questions to us afterwards, you have the email address there. Be happy to talk to them, as well as if they want to do an audit with us. Again, go to foundational5.com, or if you forget about that, in the next 60 days or so, say, I forgot that site. Where was it? Just send us an email. We'll send you there, and then we will take a look at your documents, give you a call, and we'll talk to you for free.
We'll have Brad's contact information on here at the end. Foundational 5, the link is below in the scrolling banner. So
great.
Forget.
So, all right, corporate documents. Real brief, because I know we have 3 more that we want to touch on. Corporate documents. Here's the situation. You are a company. You're either an LLC or an Inc. Maybe you're a partnership. You probably should be more of an LLC or an Inc. But either way, you're a company. You're a corporate structure. In order to benefit from the protection that a corporate structure gets, you have to act like a company. Along those lines, if you're an Inc., right, you need a shareholders agreement. If you're an LLC, you need an operating agreement. I am not right now going to say which company structure you should choose. That's largely an accounting function, quite candidly. Either one will protect you from liability if it's done correctly, but the difference between an LLC or an S Corp or a C Corp and so on, I leave that to your tax attorney or your accountant. But what we're surprised time and time again to find is that MSPs and service providers simply don't have corporate documents. And why is that a problem? Well, it's a problem if you're trying to expand, because the first thing that I would want to see if I was representing someone who's going to buy into your practice, buy into your company, take over your company, first thing I would say is, show me your operating documents. Show me, show me that you're legit. Show me that you've been handling this business as a business and not just as a hobby on the side. The other thing that you're going to want to achieve through corporate documents is you're going to define each owner's roles, responsibilities, duties, and so forth. We're all friends until we're not friends, right? And so if there's a dispute that arises between owners, directors of a company, it's not always very easily settled. We don't just sit over, a cup of coffee and say, well, what should we do? I mean, hopefully that works. But instead, what you're going to want to do is go to your corporate documents and say, listen, this is your job. This is my job. This is how it's handled. Okay. So in order to have an efficient company, make sure that your company is protected in the greatest way under the law as far as liability is concerned. You're going to want to have corporate documents. Treat your company like the company it is.
So going down that path real quick of we're friends until we're not, it's often said, I hear here, if you have to defend yourself with your agreement, you've already lost. But when it comes to revenue recovery, when it comes to protecting your assets or your business, is it a matter of you've lost, but you're protecting yourself from how much you lose, or can the MSA? Have you seen where the MSA actually you get to successfully recover lost funds?
What you mean are you talking about a corporate document or the MSA? Is this company
from either one, right? So MSA for the client, corporate documents with employees that maybe take a client list when they weren't supposed to. I mean, have you seen these used in the business?
Of course, all the time. This is what we do. This is what we see all the time. So from a corporate document perspective, we will often have service providers call us and say, we have 3 partners. We're all fighting. We're all feuding because we can't resolve this issue. They don't have corporate documents. So, now what? And then we have to act as mediators. Sometimes they'll have corporate documents and they'll say, can you interpret this for us? Tell us what we have to do. Tell us what everyone should be doing. As they say, high fences make good neighbors. Well, you need high fences in your company. As far as employment is concerned and enforcing it with employees, well, that's the next section, right? That's employment documents. And along those lines, every service provider, in my opinion, needs to have employment contracts with their employees and a company handbook to talk about what the policies are. And that's a misunderstood area as well. A handbook is not a contract. A handbook is policy. The contract is the contract. An employee contract says you're going to be hired to do this job at this pay rate. You're going to be required to engage in the following activities, whatever they are. Now, as part of an employee contract, it should say, by the way, the company has a lot of policies that you're going to be required to follow. Those are in a handbook. Here's the handbook. What is a handbook? What's the benefit of a handbook? How about social media? Right? What do you want to restrict your employees from doing or not doing? How about workplace privacy? Do you want to spy, for lack of a better word, spy on your employees? Do you want to be able to read their emails? Do you want to be able to intercept the communications that they have with the company's customers or not? You'd say, oh, that sounds sneaky and so on. Well, the question is, do you want to do it? Because if you want to do it, you better have a policy in place. Because if you don't have a policy in place, then you're going to have a problem, right? Non-competition, non-solicitation, that belongs in an employee contract, right? Employment contract. If it's not in there, you're not going to get it. And depending on the state that you're in, like California, Colorado, now Louisiana, those are starting to be disfavored. Well, California, it's been disfavored for a very long time. Other states, it's beginning to be more and more disfavored. Those are the issues that you need to address in writing. That's your employment document. So again, we have an MSA, statement of work. Those two are customer facing. They define the relationship with your customer. They manage expectations. They limit your liabilities. Corporate documents is the way that you're going to get your company into shape as the company that it is, okay? Act like a company because you are one. Employment documents is how you're going to handle your employees. You're going to set the expectations, set up restrictions, and set up policies that you want to make sure everyone follows uniformly to make sure that your company is run efficiently and effectively. The last section, contractor documents, independent contractors and subcontractor agreements. And those are two different things. Most MSPs that are small don't have the staff to do a lot of what they need to do, so they'll bring in contractors. If you're doing that on a handshake or you're doing that on an invoice, you're setting yourself up for a problem. Okay? If you're a larger MSP or a larger service provider, then you almost certainly have contractors and they have subcontractors. You need to put your arms around those relationships. You need to understand what they're doing, when they're doing it, and what liabilities they might incur on your behalf. Those are the things that every service provider needs to be thinking about. So if you look at the 5 categories of things on your screen, MSA, SOW, corporate, employment, and contractor documents, that is the foundation. That's the stuff that if you come around and say, I have this stuff, and it's well written, you're in pretty good shape. Now you can focus on the stuff that you do, the services that you're providing, expansion, research and development, and so on. And then you don't have to worry about the foundation because your foundation is solid. So that's the foundational 5, and that's why I've laid it out as I have.
I appreciate that. So let me ask you real quick, because you did mention at the start of this, it's never too late to get these things done, right? Or it's never too early equally. So I want to ask your opinion. I have a client. I've been working with them a handful of years. We have our napkin MSA in place, and then go engage you, and you put together this package that this is the law going forward. This is how we're doing things. You have any tips for communicating to that client, when it comes time, contract renewal time, or, hey, we're changing here. We're going from this 1-page document to this MSA and SOW that's much more clearly laid out. How do you communicate that to the client?
That's wow, you've put it so nicely about we're going to this because it's more clearly laid out. The flip side is we're moving to this because our other contract was actually a piece of junk, and we're a little scared that you might sue us. But that's not what you're going to say to the client. So here's what you're going to do, okay? What you're going to do is you're going to send an email. Let's say I'm the MSP and I'm dealing with you, Ray, and I realize I have a pretty crappy contract in place, and now I have a better one. So what do? I'm in the middle of a 3-year deal with you, let's say, and we're in month 5. What do? Here's what I do. I send you an email. Dear Ray, our general counsel was recently conducting a housekeeping audit of our contracts and discovered that we are not operating under the latest version of our agreements with you. Okay. So our counsel, for regulatory and insurance purposes, requires uniformity in our contracts.
Right.
And by the way, what does that mean? Here's what it means. Ready, Ray? As your attorney, I do not understand how you do not have uniformity in all of your contracts. And for internal regulation of your business, Ray, I need you to do this. I need you to set up the contracts so everybody has the same contract. Good. Now you can say your attorney said, for regulatory purposes, our attorney wants this. Great.
When in doubt, blame the attorney.
That's it. Oh, my attorney just ripped into me for a few minutes about how this is what I need to do. Okay.
I'm glad you're saying this, because I have Sean, my VP of Partner Development, listening in. He was commenting on the water bottle he got me, and he always gets mad because I will not, under any circumstances, change our MSA. It is set in stone. It's period. That's it. That came down from the mountain. It's written in stone. We're done. Mm-hmm. And so I'm glad someone of note is saying these exact things. Sean, please listen.
So, and the email that you would then send to your client, because now you have to convince them to sign this thing, because now you've got them to the point where you say, I'm in a bind. My attorney is telling me I need to do this. You say, listen, Ray, I'm enclosing a new statement of work or a new MSA, whatever it is. It does not change the services. It does not change the pricing. It does not change the timing or the scope of what we're going to do for you. Instead, it better explains what we're going to provide to you and what you should expect from us. So what we would ask is that you review it very carefully, and assuming that it's satisfactory, please sign it. It will be the document moving forward. Looking forward to continuing to work with you, right? What you'll find is most clients will sign that. They will. They'll sign it because they say, our general counsel and regulatory and insurance, we all have insurance. Lord knows that could happen. They sign it. If they don't, wait for a renewal and do the same thing.
And a good MSA can protect the client just as much as the MSP, right? I mean, it's meant to protect both sides.
Oh, a good MSA protects both you and the client, of course. Of course. In fact, a good MSA should be written in a way that protects the MSP, but is even-keeled enough that the client doesn't feel like you're forcing something on them that you're not willing to do yourself, right? If you're limiting liability, well, you might want to say both parties are limiting liability. If you have a non-solicitation in there, right, we're not going to take your employees, you might want to make that mutual. Neither of us will take each other's employees. There's no reason not to make it mutual. It makes that, pill go down a little bit easier, and it will inhibit client's desire to try to negotiate, because you don't want to negotiate. So if you start with an MSA that's pretty even-keeled, maybe, skewed in your favor. All these documents always are skewed in the company's favor, but not so much that it makes them go, oh, this is awful. They're not going to feel the need to try to negotiate it. It'll pass through. And then you don't have to worry about MSAs and statements of work being an obstacle. They become part of the natural course of business. Focus on the service. That's what it's about.
Makes perfect sense. And with that, I want to thank you, Brad. I appreciate so much, the time you've taken here. I'll put your contact information on the screen. It's been scrolling across the bottom. Guys, go to foundational5.com, do the survey, get the free consult. Use Brad. He's everywhere. You want him in your pocket. You want him on your side. Thank you so much, Brad. I appreciate you taking the time to talk to us today. And I look forward to your next broadcast. I know we didn't get to do the Sinatra songs. Maybe we'll do that on a broadcast together or something.
That's yeah, that will be by popular demand if we get enough emails.
Absolutely. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we have several events upcoming. Of course, we have Tech Bar coming up with Jason Slagle, and I see him already talking in the chat. On February 25th, on March 4th, we have Partner First featuring Lifecycle Insights. I did the technical one last year. This year, it's going to be with Sean Lardo on how to use it as a sales tool and how to make sure you're actually going and having the right conversations with your clients, just like this. March 11th, Ninja RMM MSP live chat. I'll be there with that amazing Deus on that side on recommendations for running virtual sales meetings. Follow us on social, hit us up on YouTube. We make these things for you. So thanks for spending the last hour with us, and we look forward to seeing you again. Brad, have a great rest of your week, man.
Thank you.
Appreciate you.
You too, Ray. We'll talk soon.
All right. Have a good day, guys.